かったですよ。俺は兄さんを覚えてはいられませんでしたから。
ノウ先輩。
Alright, so yeah, I'm using like a new program rather than Adobe because Adobe was acting weird. I was recommended this. So yeah, let's talk about 86 actually, because about a week ago I actually went to Hiroyuki Sawano's concert. I'll probably have that video out on my other channel, how that went, but he's pretty much the composer for 86, and I've been wanting to make 86 content a little bit more for a while, so I just want to give my predictions on what a possible season 2 will actually look like, with speculation that we are getting a season 2 sometime in 2026, sometime 2027. Me personally, I don't think it's actually going to happen for like a very long time. I do think it's already in production. I just don't believe it's going to come out anytime soon because A1 Productions, A1 Studios, whatever they're called again, is busy with solo leveling because priorities. So yeah, I just want to give you my thoughts on what a season 2 could potentially look like. Spoilers beware. So yeah. One of the great things about 86 is the world building in this series. I know a lot of people like to compare or say One Piece has some of the best world building, but clearly they have not read 86, because if you guys are like me and you guys like history or anything military related, 86 to me has some of the most fascinating like world building as well as political theater like concepts out there, because not only does it explore the aftermath of what war actually does and how it affects nations, how it affects geopolitics, how it affects people itself, it just further expands it and gives it a own self-reflection. To me, if a season 2 were to happen, which it is gonna happen, it's gonna further explore that. And what do I mean by that? Also, spoilers, by the way, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, because I'm gonna be talking about certain volumes, so I'll try not to spoil too much about what's gonna happen. But yeah, so essentially, if we were to follow the same format as the original season, we would at least cover the next 3 volumes, which would be 4, 5, and 6. The reason I think these would cover it is because it makes perfect sense. Each 3 volumes kind of follows a certain arc, and once you get to the end of the video, you'll fully understand why. So pretty much with volume 4, we get to see the aftermath of the second great offensive. The first offensive happened at the very beginning of this series. That's how the 86 were relegated to being like subhuman, and following the second offensive by the Legion, which ultimately destroyed the Republic of San Magnolia, and the only reason the Republic survived at all was due to Bloody Regina. And this, we follow the aftermath of like what happened, how pretty much the Republic has been now divided up by following nations such as the Alliance of All, such as the Gyaden Empire, such as the Federation. Pretty much all these nations came in to be peacekeepers, quote unquote, but in reality they're there just to check the Republic, because the Republic is a very interesting nation. It's pretty much like this dogmatic nation that views itself as the highest authority. It doesn't really care about other nations. It views itself with high pragmatism. It views itself as the ultimate contender, and some of the other nations don't really exist. That's why they were kind of isolated. So we get to see Lena and some of the other military members within the Republic, how they operate, how they feel. We get to see some of the viewpoints of some of the citizens, how some of the officers feel they're being treated very harshly just because they were oppressing people, just because they didn't want to fight on to the very end. Doesn't mean they should be treated like second-class citizens. So within this story so far, at least in volume 4, we have a lot of resentment towards the occupying nations, because they're coming into their land to occupy them, to protect them from the quote-unquote Legion. And the people, the Alba, kind of see something different. They start to notice that maybe we are the bad guys. So to see the exploration of the aftermath of the second great offensive, to me, is going to be one of the most fascinating things. We get to see what Lena actually did, and how a lot of the 86 laid down their lives for some of the Alba. Despite them being treated like dirt and crap, they laid down their lives for them, and some of the citizens slowly started to change their minds, which to me, I'm really excited to see that, because I like seeing political aftermath like this, because it gets really deep. It gets you thinking, are we the bad guys? Yeah, maybe we are in a sense. Not to mention, this Volume 4 picks up about 6 months after the end of the first season, after the end of volume 3 of the light novel. So we get to see more of the interaction between Shin and Lena. Lately, they've been kind of distant from one another. They haven't really interacted too much since their first confrontation with one another. So slowly, we get to see how their relationship and how their dynamics slowly builds up, how they become more or less compatriots to eventually sort of lovers, because Shin is the type of person to keep to himself. Yeah, he opens up whenever he's on the verge of death. However, Shin is not the type to outwardly express his emotions or convey them. So we get to see an arc where he pretty much has to get along with Lena. Yeah, sure, he expressed his emotions back then towards the very end of what he thought was going to be the end of his life. However, at this current point in time, he's now pretty much like a captain. He pretty much leads the squad on covert missions for the Federation, for any of the allied nations, specifically the Federation, since they're the ones that took him in. He's pretty much just leading his group and whatever. That's not until Lena is assigned with him. They've been assigned together. Everyone keeps teasing them about their relationship, saying, hey, have you guys kissed yet? Have you done anything couple like? Have you confessed your love once more? And so the Shin, this is kind of, doesn't really bug him too much. It just kind of, it's there in the background, like, why do people keep saying me and her are gonna date? Kind of like Sundari like. But yeah, Shin, he's the type of guy who's not gonna express his emotions, because all his life he's had to shove his emotions down just in order to survive. So to see him transition from this cold, calculating killer to someone who's a bit more open, but not necessarily open at the same time. Lena's reaction is quite similar, because she's outwardly expressive. However, the more as the story progresses, the more distant she gets. That kind personality she used to have at the very beginning of the series has kind of changed. It's kind of dwindled, essentially due to war, because war is gonna change people. You gotta think about it like this. At the end of the day, these guys are just teenagers. These guys are like, what, 17, 18? Their entire lives has been dictated by conflict. Lena, on the other hand, no, she's a princess. She's always been pampered. She got to choose the life that she wanted. But Shin and the rest of the 86 have never had a proper education. In this volume specifically, some of the other people start to question them, saying, hey, what are they gonna do whenever the war ends? And that's when Shin and the rest of the people start to think, what are we gonna do when the war ends? Because we don't know what we're gonna do. We've only known war for our entirety of our lives. One of the more interesting things about this, aside from the dynamic aspect, is the fact we get to explore another nation, the United Kingdom of Royal Garcia. The United Kingdom is essentially this monarchy ruled by a king, and we get to meet one of the princes. The prince is actually very fascinating to me. He's this character who doesn't view himself as a prince. Yeah, he has nobility, but he doesn't usually use that to his end. Like, he doesn't really acknowledge it. Well, he does, but he's more of a scientific genius. He's a genius. When I mean this guy's a genius, he also has an ability similar to Shin. Also, spoilers, this is gonna contain spoilers. We get to learn more about Shin's lineage, how most of the nobility, how most people in nobility have abilities similar to Shin. So the supernatural essentially exists. However, it's not everyone can use it. That's why Shin is very special, because he comes from a bloodline which can use the same abilities as him. Same thing with Frederica. She can also use abilities. And Victor, the prince, he has an ability. He's an Esper. That is pretty much his ability. Also, one of the cool things we get to learn about the United Kingdom is, rather than using foot soldiers like most traditional armies use, Victor has invented the sirens. Now, the sirens to me are probably going to be one of the more controversial things, especially given how AI is on the rise in our world. The sirens are essentially cyborgs, and cyborgs, they're like cyborgs, but not really. Pretty much everything about them is metallic. The only thing that's human is their brains. You know how the Legion uses brains in order to fight their wars? They use the brain as a fuel source, as a battery, as a component for their war machines. Yeah, the sirens kind of do the same thing. Sure, they're human in the sense that they still look human. They have a human brain, but at the same time, they're not human. So it comes into a moral dilemma with the rest of the 86, as they see these sirens as weapons. They see them as a manifestation of themselves in a way that, okay, yeah, the sirens were actual weapons built for war, while the 86 were just children who were raised through war. And there's this one specific scene in Volume 4 where they're trying to do a siege battle, and these sirens constantly just throw themselves at the enemy legion. They just throw themselves so carelessly. They die in succession one way or another. Kind of like how in Warhammer 40k, the Kriegsmen just throw themselves at the enemy. They don't really care what happens. Yeah, that's pretty much what the sirens do here. And it horrifies Shin and the rest of the 86 as they start to think to themselves, wait a minute, is this us? Were we always like this? Was this always our path? Were we always gonna end up like this if we throw ourselves so relentlessly at conflict with the sake of just existing? Was this our ultimate goal? So they're horrified by the existence of sirens, yet at the same time they acknowledge them, because in a way they're so similar to them, because they were created as weapons and they're seen as nothing else but weapons. So to me, these sirens are the more interesting aspects of Volume 4. Yes, to see how Shin and the rest of the 86 react is utterly horrifying, because I mean, who wouldn't be afraid of weapons like this existing? Speaking of the sirens, there is one siren that's very important. Her name is Lurch. Lurch is pretty much the assistant to Victor. In a way, they kind of have like this interesting dynamic. I would say like a master apprentice dynamic, how they have in Star Wars. Like there's Padawans, there's Jedi Knights, there's masters. I would say this is kind of similar to like Ahsoka and Anakin, how they have this interesting dynamic where Lurch views Victor as her soul master, as her creator, but at the same time they're very buddy with each other, and it's pretty cool. To me, whenever she appears, I guarantee she's gonna be best girl in this series. Yeah, she looks human at the end of the day. She may be human, but she is not. She is just a machine, and whether you like machines or not, you're gonna feel something for Lurch, whether it's like this cute attraction to her or like this deep sadness for her, because knowing her only purpose is to pretty much serve Victor and to be a siren, you're gonna be other horrified by it. Lurch's character is very interesting, as she has contempt for people, as she doesn't understand why people needlessly throw their lives away in such petty conflicts, as in an age where where war doesn't really have to exist, people still wage war, and she doesn't really understand why people have to fight when machines like them exist, when everything could be better if they let the sirens and everyone else take over. She, to me, is a very interesting character, because yeah, sure, she is a machine, sure. However, she's still kind of human. She looks human. She is human in a sense, but she is not. So you're gonna have this controversial dilemma, whether you think, is it okay for me to care about this person? Is it okay for me to care about this character just because they look human? But at the end of the day, they are not. So to me, Lurch is one of my favorite characters. I really like her character. I really like her dynamic with Victor and how she gets along with Shin, because they have this, they're kind of polar opposites. They're pretty much the same thing. How they view humanity with neglect, with resentment, that war is pretty much just stupid. Like, war doesn't really have to happen. So I do like the dynamic between Shin and Lurch whenever they do interact, because it's interesting. It is very interesting. Essentially, the rest of the season, what it would consist of, is going to take place in the United Kingdom of Ro. Yeah, while we explore the aspects of the Republic, we're mainly going to focus on some of the operations within the United Kingdom, as the Legion and their second offensive has moved forward into some of these other nations. The United Kingdom is pretty isolated. It's a monarchy. It needs allies, so therefore the Confederacy sends in reinforcements for them. So to me, I'm very excited to see how it's going to develop. Yeah, we get to meet Lurch, we get to meet Victor, aka Vika, we get to meet some of these other characters. We get to see the rest of the 86 develop. We get to see more of Shin's backstory. I did mention earlier how Shin comes from nobility, and it's actually pretty tragic now that I think about it, because I remember reading this and I was crying because pretty much everyone he ever knew is dead. The only one who exists is his grandfather. I don't want to spoil too much about what happens because it's yeah, I don't really want to spoil too much about what happens when he meets his only remaining relative. It's pretty sad. It's very tragic. If you guys have ever like lost anyone, then you know how it feels to reunite with someone that you haven't seen in a long time. Also, the thing about 86 is what I mentioned earlier, we get to see the dynamic between Shin and Lena. It's further explored within this season. Like, yeah, they'll get together, but at the same time they won't, as a rift will start to form between them, as Lena is always constantly thinking about Shin, how he's being so reckless, how he throws himself at the battlefield, how he doesn't really care for anyone but himself. He just throws himself at the enemy. He does life risking maneuvers that others would view as completely insane, completely barbaric. Even some of the rest of the 86 start to wonder, what is wrong with Shin? Is it because he doesn't want to die? Is it because he failed to die that he's throwing his life so carelessly? And Lena feels very helpless. So does Shin, because Shin views himself as not her equal. He's just a foot soldier. He's just a grunt. Yeah, a lot of people are going to say things about them. And yeah, that's how it is, because they both come from separate worlds. Like I mentioned earlier, Lena is this pampered princess with, like, she pretty much got everything she ever wanted in her life. She's never really had to suffer, aside from her father pretty much being killed by helping the 86. She personally has never really suffered, so everything that she does, she doesn't really have to do. So in the final volume 6, we get to see them like struggle, like with this mentality. Am I good enough for her? Am I good enough for him? So to me, I think this is going to be one of those things that people might be annoyed by, because they were expecting them to like get together, but no, because this feels very realistic, especially given in a wartime scenario. How do you deal with someone that you don't know is going to come back while you're sitting there commanding people? You start to feel inadequate. So I'm very excited to see how this is going to play out. Some people might hate this, some people might not, but to me, this feels something more of what a realistic relationship would look like in a wartime scenario. So that's pretty much my predictions, or pretty much how season 2 would look like if we were to follow the volumes. Yeah, volume 4 will cover the post aftermath of the Second Great Offensive, what happened to the Republic. Volume 5 will pick up with the invasion of the United Kingdom of Royal Garcia, how the Legion is now moving inwards into other nations, and how the Confederacy sends reinforcements, how they send their special package, aka the Spearhead Squadron, along with Lena to commandeer, along to support the rest of the United Kingdom forces. We get the introduction of the Sirens, and for volume 6 we get to see more of the relationship pretty much fall apart and then get back together. It's really cool. It all culminates into like Lena and Shin getting even closer to officially becoming a couple, and you get to see some of the other side characters such as Raiden and Corina. Like, they get some action in there too, but I won't talk about them till I talk about the later volumes, because they have their own arcs. But this is what I predict a season 2 would look like. Let me know what you guys think. If you've read the novels, do you agree or disagree with me? Maybe they'll shift some things around, maybe they won't, but that's just pretty much my predictions on what's gonna happen if a season 2 will take place. Now, I'll eventually talk forward about the rest of the volumes. I'll give my insights on them and how I think volume 7 would make for a perfect movie. In my humble opinion, I think volume 7 has the potential to be an 86 movie, but we'll see. I'll get to that eventually. I'll probably do some videos talking about some of the other nations, talking about some of the abilities of some of the other nobles. But yeah, that's just my 86 video. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you guys on my next one. Peace.